Hello, my name's Jonathan Tuppeny and I've been working with Microsoft Access and other database applications for many years. Most people's idea of an internet application is something that appears in a web browser. However, when it comes to putting databases online, this is often not the best approach. Browser applications are page-based and tend to involve a lot of scrolling. It's possible to provide a much better user interface by using Microsoft Access as the front end instead. Access comes with lots of features for working with databases, and it's part of the Microsoft Office suite which most people already have, so it makes sense to use it. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take an existing Access database and transfer the tables into SQL Azure. This will give you a database that you can share across the internet. Let's start by looking at the software applications that you'll need. I'll now run through the tools that I will be using in this video. If you don't already have Access, then obviously this is a must for working with Access databases. Access isn't included with the entry-level edition of Office 365, so you may have to upgrade your package to get it. Another thing that you will need is a subscription to Microsoft Azure. This is where you will create your database, and this is where it will be hosted. Microsoft offers a trial period, so you can test your database before you commit to an ongoing subscription. Do a search for Azure trial and follow the link to set this up. SSMA stands for SQL Server Migration Assistant. This is a useful tool for taking an existing Access database and transferring the tables and data to SQL Azure. This is free to download, so search for SSMA for Access and follow the link. Once your database has been set up on Azure, you will no longer be able to add or edit tables using Access. SQL Server Management Studio is a tool that will allow you to manage your SQL Azure database going forward. Again, this is free to download, so search for SQL Server Management Studio and follow the link. Finally, in order to connect Access to your Azure database, you will need to install an ODBC driver. ODBC stands for Open Database Connectivity. Once again, this is a free utility. Do a search for the ODBC driver for SQL Server to find the latest version. You will see that there are versions for x86, x64 and ARM64. Download the x64 version to install drivers for both the 32 and 64-bit versions of Access on Windows. We'll now take a look at the Access database that I'll be using in this demonstration. Here we have a straightforward staff database developed entirely in Microsoft Access with the user interface and tables all within the same file. There is a list of all the staff which we can scroll through to find a record, or we can enter a few characters to perform a search. Each staff record has a tab with the main details such as address and phone number. There's a tab for notes where we can add any number of text records for the staff member. And finally, there's a tab where we can easily assign the qualifications that this member of staff has. Underlying the interface, we have a series of tables which contain the data. There are tables for the staff, the notes and the qualifications, along with some tables storing ancillary data. What we want to be able to do is keep the existing interface and its programming, but we want to be able to easily share the data across the internet so people in multiple locations can work with the database. In order to do this, we need to transfer these tables and their data into a SQL Azure database that is hosted online. Then we need to link these new online tables to the existing user interface in Access. By doing this, we can keep the existing familiar Access interface, but now we can share the database between more users in more places. The first step is to set up an SQL Azure database that we can transfer our tables into. So here we are in the Microsoft Azure account. Your home page should look similar to this. To add a database to Azure, you first need to create a database server. Click the Create Resource link and then choose Databases. Now choose SQL Server. First select your subscription and then a resource group. If you don't already have a resource group, click Create New and enter a name. Now enter the name for the server. This has to be in all lowercase characters. Choose a location. It makes sense to choose a location close to you, but you don't have to. And now select the authentication method. I use SQL authentication. Enter a server admin login and the password, and confirm the password. Then click Review and Create. Once the deployment of the server is complete, you will need to set up the firewall rules. One of the features of a SQL Server on Azure is that you can restrict the IP addresses that can gain access to the server. You will need to add at least your own IP address to the firewall rules in order to access the database. Click on Security and then Networking. Allow selected networks. Then go to Firewall Rules. There is a link to add your current IP address to the rules. If you want to be able to access your database from any location, you can add a rule that will allow all IPs. Click Add a Firewall Rule. Enter all IPs for the name, and then 000, 000, 000, 000, 000 for the start, and then 255, 255, 255, 255 for the end. Click OK. You will now have a server that your database can be set up on. Click Save. To set up the new database, click the Create Database link. Enter a database name. Click Configure Database to set the tier of the database you want to create. This is important because if you choose an inappropriate tier, your database could end up being very expensive. I suggest that you start with the lowest tier and increase the service provision if you need to. Click on Service Tier and select Basic. This will give you a maximum database size of 2 GB, which should be sufficient for most databases. You can increase the size later if required. Click Apply, then Review and Create, and then Create. You now have a server on Azure and a database into which you can transfer the tables from your Access database. Let's move on to look at the next step. We will now use the SQL Server Migration Assistant to transfer the tables from our Access database into the database we created in Azure. When you start up the Migration Assistant, you'll see the Migration Wizard. This will guide you to the process step by step, and I'll use it for this demonstration. Click Next to start. First, we'll create a new project to save the details of the migration. Choose a name or use the default name suggested. Select a location to save the files, and then select a target for the migration. Click Next to continue. Now locate the Access database with the tables you wish to upload. Click Add Databases and browse for your database. Click Next to continue. Next, you have the option to select which tables you want to migrate. We'll select all the tables to transfer. Click Next to continue. Now you need to log on to your Azure database. The server name will be the name that you selected, followed by database.windows.net. The database will be the name of the database that you created. You will then need to enter the username and the password that you selected for your server. Click Next to continue. Next, you'll see an option to automatically link the tables that you create to your Access database. I find it's better to do this later, so leave the checkbox unchecked. Click Next to continue. The convert process can take a while depending on the size and the complexity of your source database. Once the conversion is completed, you'll see a list of tables to synchronize between the two databases. Click OK to use all the tables. The load and migrate process will now start. When complete, you can click Close and exit the application. If you have the SQL Server Management Studio installed, you can use this to view your database. To connect, you'll need the same credentials that we used in the Migration Assistant. your server name followed by database.windows.net and your username and password. Click Connect. You can use the tree view in the Object Explorer to navigate to the tables in your database. Open Databases, your database, and then Tables. You can examine the columns in the tables and look at the records. Right-click on the table and select Top 10,000 Rows to get a quick view of the table's contents. Now that we have our database set up on Azure, we need to link the tables to the user interface in our original Access database. Before you start this, make sure you've installed the SQL Server ODBC driver, otherwise you won't be able to connect the tables. As you can see, I've already removed the original tables from the Access database. Make sure you have a backup before deleting the tables. Go to the External Data tab on the ribbon and click New Data Source. Then choose Database and Azure Database. Choose to link the tables and click OK. Now you need to set up a data source which will contain the details of the connection. Click New and then select the ODBC driver that you installed. Click Next. Now select the file you wish to save the data source to. Click Browse and select a folder and enter the name for your file. Click Save and then click Next. Now click Finish to complete this connection setup. Enter a description and enter the server name. This will be your server name followed by database.windows.net. Click Next. Now choose your authentication, in this case SQL Server Authentication. Enter your username and password. Click Next. Change the default database to your new database. Click Next. Finally, click Finish and test your data source. If everything's working, click OK. If not, go back and check the values you've entered. You'll now be taken back to the start of the data source setup. Click OK, enter the password, and click OK to connect to the Azure server. You'll see a list of the tables in the database. This also includes all the system tables. You only need to link to the tables with the prefix DBO. You need to click on each table that you want to link to. Once you've selected all your tables, click OK. You'll now see all the tables in the Azure database linked to your Access database, and each table name is prefixed with DBO. Right-click on a table name and select Rename. Remove the first 4 characters and save. You'll need to repeat this for every table. Once all of your tables have been renamed, you can use your Access database just as you did before, except now all of your data is being saved to the SQL Azure database that you created. I hope you found this video useful and that it provides you with the necessary knowledge to get started. In future videos I'll be looking at some of the details of working with Access and SQL Azure. Please leave a comment if there's a particular area that you would like me to cover. Thanks for watching.